All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to, I think it is week 16. Oh, there's Marilyn there. Of our Saturday series on inclusion of in the arts. My name is Amy Levesque. I'm the executive director of Inclusive Theater of Western New York, and I have Dallas Taylor, who will be helping me tonight. He's the artistic director, and we are so very lucky tonight to have the beautiful and just one of the realest people I've ever met, Verneice Turner, here tonight as our guest for this week. We were just talking a little bit before we got started here. Verneice has been a supporter of inclusive theater since the beginning. She attended our first performances at Hall Walls when we were doing our Voices project, giving people who don't always have a voice a floor to do that. She was also there when we staged our first production at Alleyway Theater and Where Will You Put the Things You Save. She's been at our Festival of Shorts, and put it this way, Verneice is always there for us, and we love you for that. But also, Verneice is probably one of the brightest lights I've ever met. And I don't say that lightly. Every time that I have seen you, anytime that we've had engagement at all, you've always been so positive and so bright, and we need more of that, especially in our world. And we're just so grateful that you're here. Just a real quick snippet of her biography. Verneice is a performance artist. She won an Artie Award. Also a director from Buffalo, New York. She started out at the African American Cultural Center, studying drama under June L. Saunders Duell. She continued her studies in the performing arts at SUNY at Buffalo. She has worked with directors Edward G. Smith, Saul Elkin, Richard Grant, Lorna C. Hill, and others. And we're very, very excited to have you here tonight with us. So thank you, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. We are glad to have you. So just to kind of get our conversation running, I guess. Also, before we came on, you and Jessica were talking a little bit about labels. And, you know, we talk about inclusion in the arts, and oftentimes, you know, at Inclusive, we see folks that aren't included at all. So we find that these labels have these negative connotations because people are expected to fit into these little kind of blocks of something. I don't know what that is. And you two had some really great points, and I wondered if you would just kind of talk a little bit about why it's problematic when folks are put into these little boxes, and why when we focus solely on what that difference is, it doesn't work.
Well, one of the things is being a believer in Jesus the Christ and a practitioner of Buddhism. One of the very interesting things that Buddhism teach is to see things for what they really, really are. And we have allowed labels or designations to become a solid thing rather than just simply an aid to navigate. And like so many things that were meant to be kind of guidelines, kind of help you, they become rigid and solid. And just like Jessica and I were sharing about when she did the play at Alleyway, and she was saying, well, the words, they just stay with me. And I said, well, you felt that because you were representing a young lady who just wanted to live her life and be accepted as a young woman. And we got into the whole talk about why I say I prefer to say I'm an African American. You obviously consider you a European American, somebody of Asian ancestry, or better yet, as I saw it was stated to a photographer who I was so fortunate to be photographed by in New York City, Bert Andrews, and they say an American photographer of African ancestry.
Nice, very nice.
And then it hit me, one, black and white takes up less ink on paper and in our mouth. So it's easy to say that, but they don't think about the connotations that comes with the color black, the color white. Just like I don't like to use the word race. I'm not flippant when I say there's only one race, the human race. I prefer to say the human species or humankind, because subconsciously the word race, what comes to mind, competition compared to ethnicity. And I know the anthropologists, they feel like they gotta have their groups of people, you know, the Caucasoid, but then the Negroid, the Mongoloid, and this, that, and the other. And what ends up happening, those things become rigid. And then we take them out And just like how it was interesting to find out how people of similar economic background in the South, be they European Americans or African Americans, they came together and developed a co-op, cotton co-op. But then the powers that be start saying to the European Americans, well, you know you white, and don't you prefer to be white rather than working with them black peoples over there? And so that started the economic crack and divide between a common community. So the whole things with label, and they'll say, well, we want to make sure everybody get the same amount of money. That's why in the census or this and that, we put the so-called, I still say ethnic rather than racial categories, so we can make sure that the money is distributed equitably, which is BS. Just do right by people. You have a community that's maybe economically challenged, give them a fair amount of money. You have somebody who may have physical challenges, okay, we may need to support them more than other groups of people because they're able to work, their income is good, so forth and so on. So it's a thing that we really have to work through. But as I shared with somebody, as African American, as we went from the N-word, the color, the Negro, to eventually Black, to African American, we have to determine that. Okay, we couldn't wait to the power that be to get it up to speed. And that's like with you with inclusive theater. You didn't wait for the road less traveled, the Kevin Oki, the Irish classical or whatever. You said, okay, I know my daughter and her community deserve to be heard. And just like those of us in the African American community who start saying, we have a history. We come from a continent. We may not know exactly what tribe, Ashanti, Butu, Benin, whatever, okay, Yoruba, whatnot, what tribe we come from. But we know we came from Africa. Our ancestors are predominantly from Africa. So we have a histories of kings and queens and mathematicians and educators. So we know those in the community that you purpose to represent, they were scientists, Stephen Hawking, so many brilliant people that, but they had to make it known. They had to make it clear that we will not tolerate it being ignored. They couldn't wait for the power that be. And so it's the same thing as with myself and others. My mother was one that she would say European, you know. So that, and the anthropologist, well, somebody can be Black and still be European. You know what I mean when I say European. You know what I mean when I say African. You know what I mean when I say Asian. You know, so don't try and play the little slick stuff because you like that power play of words. Because I couldn't believe real quick how some European American was surprised when I said, oh, you're not white. There's no such thing as white land. And they said, what do you mean? What am I? I said, well, where did your people come from? Well, they came from Italy. Well, you're a European American, darling. Okay.
Right. Well, we see that often in the disability community because we get the overreaching disabled, right? But then there's these pockets that are whittled down. So it's not enough that people are disabled or have different levels of ability. They're further divided into autistic, cerebral palsy, MS. So, you know, to your point about the economic disparities and things like that, you know, giving people what they need to be successful in the world, not even, you know, we have friends that are using wheelchairs that are 20, 30 years old. You know, they're still operating on the manual chair because somebody doesn't think that they're worthy of providing things to. So we often see that within our community as well, which is very similar to, you know, some of the deficits in other communities, like, you know, our refugee population in Buffalo. It is one of the most vibrant and beautiful communities. And they're often the ones that are left to the side where they're not being talked about, or when there's a raid coming in, that's the first community they go to, right? So they use that stereotyping to isolate and identify, and that's very difficult and problematic.
Yeah. And it's critical that those of us who suffer, because just like you say, like in the Broadway, Fillmore area, you have a large Muslim community and Southern Eastern Asian community and whatnot. And it's just like, don't on, if they need the sewer replaced, replace the sewers. Okay. Don't say, well, we got to demographically find out who's living there in order to divide up the public monies. No, you see a need, fill it, address it, and we'll be a richer and more solid society. And along with that, we end up allowing the arts to expand and prosper, because when the community is rich and people feel like they belong and they feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves, that brings so much more up out of us, you know. And yeah, I hear you on that. You know, go down Grand Street.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we have learned with inclusive is that, you know, when given an opportunity and the tools needed to be successful, you know, as long as you commit to it, you know, not everybody is going to be Mariah Carey as a singer, not everybody is going to be, you know, Angelina Jolie or whatever, right? But if you give folks the tools to better themselves in the arts and they want to commit to it and they do it, they can do it. I mean, we saw that. We did Shakespeare, you know, we were told we couldn't do that, right? Like, but it does happen. We just have to, you know, I like to often say like that the people aren't disabled, the world is.
Right.
So if we can fix the world, right, like those pieces are what we need to, you know, do the things around. We can make accommodation to give people what they need to be successful and live the life that they want to live. And the
exactly.
art
and we all prosper from it, right?
Yes, because you learn, and that space of learning, especially in theater, and having that chance where you feel safe and you can take a chance. I think that's where the arts has worked. You know, in our case, we see it every day. We've seen people grow.
Right.
Dallas Taylor is what I always, and I put him on the spot, but like he was my student. I didn't know all of the things he was capable of.
Yes.
And he came in and he's been like a little butterfly. You know, I don't know what he's going to do next.
He knocked it out of the park when I saw him at at Hall Walls, sharing his story. Okay. Because to see him at first, you think, okay, everything fine. What's the deal? But then when he shared what the things that he had to work with and through, and it's each character. Okay, I can't recall his name. The gentleman that was in the wheelchair that went on a date.
Oh, that was Mike. Yeah, it was Mike Rogers. Okay. Yes.
Okay, and everything, and just talk about the niceness of there being a date, and see, to a certain degree, that's what the arts have gotten away from. It was meant to be a storytelling safe space, and it started with the whole campfire thing. And people coming together and sharing stories with each other. And in the sharing of the stories, the evolution of things growing. And when I used to have Buffalo East, and I had the Actors Workshop, one of the things I tried to get people to understand, it's not about being an actor or being on the stage. That's great, that's icing on the cake. The whole thing about theater is allowing yourself to make yourself be comfortable in the world and to realize how full and deep and rich one is within, and finding the means to bring that out in the most applicable situations and circumstances. Because I know for me, I wouldn't have had my other career, which is a mechanical draftsman, if I hadn't had drama classes that taught me how to deal with the butterflies. Okay, and to be comfortable around different people and not be afraid to allow me to be me that was appropriate for that particular moment in time.
Dallas, I'm tossing to you.
I want to thank you for sharing some time with us, Verneice. It's an honor to get to talk to you. I just want to go back to what you were talking about earlier, because I never really thought of it that way. And you were talking about how you don't really use the word race because it's so rigid and it solidifies things. We would prefer to use the word species. And I was thinking about it, like we as a species, when we use that term, when we think about it that way, how we can evolve intellectually. And if we use the word species, it allows for that evolution. But if we use the word race, it's sort of, now you're in a different spot and you can't grow there. You have to stay there. And us as a human species, we are a communal species.
Yes.
And we've seen for these past few months, this virus has been like the perfect enemy for us, because it's caused us to go away from that. So now there's no communication. We have to stay away from each other. We have to quarantine. We have to isolate, social distance. Everything that's keeping us from what has made us a successful species is that communication. And as we've seen in throughout life or humankind, when there's a lack of communication or miscommunication, that's where problems come
Mhm.
about. So I was just thinking about just that whole process as you were talking about it, and it's just different to
Yes.
think about.
Because one thing Buddhism speaks of really seeing things and trying to push your perceptions out of the way so that you can clearly see. And one of the whole things that you was talking about in a race, I'm stuck at having lost the race. Okay, I came in first place, I came in second, I came in third. Whereas when you just say species, it speaks of presence, just being. And one of the things I would like to share, and I know this has been rough for a lot of people, this whole quarantine thing and whatnot, but for me, that's why people who friend me on Facebook, they know I do a lot of church programs. I have my morning church programs. But the whole thing for me is to know who I truly am. And when you recognize you are a spirit being housed in a body, even though you may be physically separated, you can spiritually be there for somebody. Because I'm a big believer in the power of prayer, praying for each other, praying for myself. When a thought comes to my mind, allowing myself to recognize this is not all there is for me. There comes a times when you have to do a lot of communicating with yourself. And I like what Iyanla Vanzant said. She said, never say you live alone. Always say you live with yourself, because who better to be with than with yourself? And I was like, yeah, taking that time to read, to study, to indulge in a little music, a little painting, or just having a cup of tea and reading a favorite book. I don't like the circumstances under which we have been made to be still, but to a certain degree, our society has kept us going so much that we don't know how to be when the wheel isn't going. And so many of us feel lost. Whereas in the power, the whole Zen thing, where they make you just sit for a certain amount of time and be comfortable with boredom, it teaches you how to just be present. Just like today, everybody was enjoying the rain and whatnot. And we take rain and stuff for granted, but since we kind of been, confined and whatnot, now we're noticing things we would have just shot through without a thought. And so all this is also a part of an evolution of our humanity, knowing, yes, I can be fine being with me as well as being fine being with you, seeing you. Just real quick, not to go to a tragic term, but just seeing an article about a vet. I won't go into the detail, but sad to say, his wife and kids are now without him physically. And just losing that sense of, let me work to be aware that I am worth the work of being here and keeping my mind in a good place. It's okay for me to talk with myself if I need to talk myself down from something or away from something. I am to do that, because also too, in developing that conversation and everything, in theater, that's what you need to do when you get a script. You get a character, a role in a play. One, you should read the whole story. I used to be old school where, okay, let me get my lines, let me focus on my lines. But I realized that's very selfish, because as an actor, you should not only be aware of what your role, but you should be aware of everybody else's roles from the actor, not the character perspective, but from the actor's perspective. what's going on with everybody else in the play so that you can properly develop your character. Don't worry about that. I got an answer machine. So you should allow yourself to be able to know the whole story in a script. And that's really how life is. As we come into our spirit self, the divine spirit from which we come from will allow us to have a bigger, broader view of things. Then one, we don't have to be fearful, especially if folks don't get it. I mean, I'm not there yet. I say that all confidently, but I keep working on it. But as I allow myself to rise up, and just like I realized the whole black-white thing was created to divide, to have people feel special so their commonality is pushed out of the way, compared to saying, we're trying to just live a good life. Let's come together and see what a good life we can have. Same thing with the script. Okay, I'm an actor, I'm playing a certain character. This character has to deal with these other characters who have things going on. And since I'm aware of their lines and how they're responding to different things, even when I'm not on stage, but as the actor, I can see this is what these different characters, well, then my character has to develop a backstory. So when I do happen to come on the stage, it is real and relevant what I share and express through the character I'm portraying. So, and again, that whole species things, when we can come from a neutral place, that opens up the doors for so many wonderful things to happen. And I'm glad you appreciate the word species, because it just neutralizes all the things and the trappings and the crap that comes with the word race.
And I will just,
it's also just more fun to say.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm just going to hop in and say, like, you're very humble, because I remember many a conversation with Lorna Hill, Rester, like but always she said, seeing the full view of what's happening is a gift, because many actors come in and learn their lines and go.
Right.
Or they'll learn just their lines and not look at the full picture. And I remember Jessica having a conversation with her and her saying, like, no, this is not something that happens all the time. Unfortunately, people don't always do that. So it is in fact a gift, which also just, I mean, that's what you are. So to know that you see that doesn't surprise me at all, because that's how you view the world too. I mean, which is beautiful, and we love you for that. So just another one of those.
Thank you. And Lorna Hill was my advisor at UB back in 1976, okay, when she first came here from Dartmouth. And as we shared earlier, I started out at the African American Culture Center. The Divine was kind enough to put me in the neighborhood where I could walk right around the corner. And, again, talking about awareness of our issues and things that we know that should be addressed, but maybe they're not being addressed by the proper persons or entities or institutions that should be addressed in them. Malcolm Earn, I don't hear of him enough. He should be up on that freedom wall on Ferry in Michigan, because he founded the African American Culture Center. And so he saw a need in our community. And my grandmother took me to see a performance at Klein Dance Music Hall, and that lit a fire under me. Even though, like so many of us, we started off in church with the Easter programs and the plays and the this and that. But when I saw people who looked like me up on the stage at the Klein Dance Music Hall back in the 60s, it was just like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. And so I ran up and I saw a young lady after the performance who I went to school with. And she said, oh, girl, that's at the African Culture Center around the corner. So I went, and before I knew it, things were happening and everything. And I was just amazed. And the number of years that I had spent there dealing with people and working with people and everything and stuff. I am so sorry about this message that's coming out of the blue. I living out here in the country, I get these oddball phone calls. It should be over in a minute. Okay. Okay, there it is. It's over. You know, when I lived on the east side of Buffalo, I hardly got any phone calls. He's very humble. I'm out here in Sanborn, New York, and I get all kinds of miscellaneous phone calls. But at the African Culture Center, I got to know about myself. I had wonderful instructors like Glennis Green, Senior Hainsworth, Benji Owalo. I got to work under directors like Ed Lawrence, who I ended up meeting Joel Giambra, one of the wonderful actors, artists here in Western New York, who he's in heaven now blowing that trumpet and running his lines, and got to work with Manny Freed and George Freeman, prominent actors back in the 60s and the 70s. And the first play I performed in, it was Black Girl, not Black Girl, A Black Man in White America, because there's another play I was fortunate enough to direct that called A Black Girl in Search of God. Okay, but this was A Black Man in White America, the experience of our people throughout the whole America's issue history. And so in doing those work, it gave me confidence. And what was beautiful, as you do with inclusive theater, it was like, yeah, you may have this issue, but you also have the power to make the best of whatever it is you got to deal with. And that was the thing many of our instructors demanded of us. When you come in the studio, be prepared to do the work. And one of the biggest things you was talking about earlier, everybody can't be a Mariah Carey or this, that, and the other. But I love this Jewish story that said there was a rabbi that went and stood before God. And he had some little issue. And the man, I guess, said something like, well, I can't be like Moses. And God said, I didn't ask you to be like Moses. I asked you to be your best self. And I'm grateful I had mentors. You don't do this to be famous. You don't do this, you don't even do this even for the applause. You do this work because you know you are to do it. You know you are to be the storytellers. And if you get an applause, beautiful. But when you know you've given it your best, whatever it is you were to do, and in the first play I did, we did an African dance, a young lady and myself, and then we were off. That was it. But that stair-stepped into other things. But we were taught, even if you're on the stage for a hot minute, you give it your best because the people, time deserve it. So for me, you do this because you know you are to do it. And you appreciate the opportunity to share, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, Marilyn can attest from the beginning, we have said, this is completely divinely inspired. Everybody that we run into has been brought to us. We hope that people will find their way, but the ones that do are the ones that we know were brought there for purpose and for reason. And that's why we do what we do. And we know that it's important. And we know that this work, not just, as you said, to get an applause, because we love that. Like, that's that human piece, right? But also know, that benefit of, yeah, why not? I mean, I love it. But, but also for the folks that are involved, it's very empowering to take your voice back. And it's also empowering for you to tell your story and to have people that traditionally do it stop it because they don't know your life. And that's what's important.
Exactly. Because the first one play, I mean, oh God, what was the British actor who did it? I can't think of his name, but when they did the play Elephant Man on Broadway, okay? And it was about the man who, he had growth issues, so he had different deformities and whatnot. And I mean, theater, it's great that he is hurt. Was it John Hurt? I can't think of that actor's name, but another Hurt that did it. And a lot of us felt that we knew people who were dealing with physical challenges, who I'm sure with the right coaching and training and whatnot could have played that role. And just like in so many other movies and stories and whatnot, people feeling, because what was the young woman who She was the first mute, I don't like to say deaf mute, who did the TV show or whatnot. And one of her biggest issues was they had an actor play the role in a movie of a young woman who was deaf. And she was like, I could have played that role. I can't think of her name. She was a brunette, wore glasses. Lord, I feel so
Marley
bad.
Matlin. Marley
Okay.
Matlin. That's, I think.
It might have been her, yeah. But it's just like, if people took the time to search and find, because just like your piece at Hall Walls, it was so powerful to hear the story from you guys. And I can tell many of you, Marilyn, I remember the vocal training, learning to project, learning to feel comfortable. When Jess told her own story about herself, everybody, I can tell, if I'm not mistaken, y'all did some vocal work. Y'all did some exercises for the voices piece.
They wrote, yeah, from start to finish. They wrote their pieces. We worked for weeks to get them to where they could, because some turned out they could have been on stage for an hour and a half on their own. So we had them down to, you know, the small. But yeah, I mean, everything. And then from the acting classes to coming together as a group and practicing, it was all part of that piece. Yep.
So it's critical for us, because it's similar like Buffalo United Artists, to tell the story of what's going on in the gay LGBTQXA community. I hope I got that right, okay? Because you guys androgynous and whatnot community. A lot of their stories and plays they did to speak of their issues and their lives, and to share with the community the stories. One of the plays they did, and I know sometimes people get tired of me talking about this play, but it was this play they did called Some Men, which was the history of the gay community throughout, from like, I think they started from the 1940s, 50s, play was, and to see the intimate boundaries and things that they were up against. As a woman outside of that world, it brought me in. And even though I thought I knew, I thought I was aware, I realized how there was things I still needed to understand about them in their lives. And the same thing with our voices. Yeah, we may go around and say, yeah, I know a person in this, that, and this, that, and they have this challenge and everything, but they're good people. But there's a big opening of the heart even more when, was it Mike who told the story about going out on the date, and then the guy coming up and just taken away. And he's just like, oh, please, I'm having a nice time with this lady. Why you got to come up and muck with my program?
That, yes, that was, I mean, I remember like hearing that story for the first time and was mortified. Like, and Mike, I hope at some point he has time to return, because I know he works a lot of hours. But you know, some of the stories that he talks about, just mortifying. I mean, in this particular case, the gentleman that approached him automatically assumed that the woman that was with him was his personal care aide, and basically just went up to him and asked him if he was incontinent and maybe she should help. Marilyn, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, and I was thinking when we had the Buffalo State students who heard in the rehearsal, we had them for the rehearsal, and they heard his story. And I remember at the end of it, they gave some feedback, and one of them said she never thought that someone's face was so happy. It was beatific, you know, because that's exactly what he wanted. Wanted PC point. That's why he told the story.
Exactly.
And she got
don't be so presumptuous about my life.
Right.
Yes,
right.
yes.
Yeah. But that's what part of what we always wanted to do with inclusive was put different kinds of faces in older roles, you know, reimagine those roles.
Absolutely. And along with yourself, you know, it would be so easy to say, okay, when you came out and talked about what you were dealing with, and it's so easy for people to look at you and say, oh, everything is fine. What is she doing? You know, thinking that, okay, you're one of the advisors. You can't be actually one of the members of the group and say, oh, wait a minute, okay. Because basically the whole thing, we all got little disabilities we have to deal with.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
I think that's the beauty of being able to have a platform, have a stage, and have a voice to speak up. And it's to announce that you exist, announce to the world that I'm here, I exist, I have a life that you should probably be aware of, that I maybe have some differences that you should maybe take into account before you make this kind of decision on a more bigger level that sort of generalizes everybody. So for us to be able to announce that we're here, that we exist, that puts us on the map, essentially.
Yes.
And we can't be ignored. We
Absolutely.
won't be ignored.
And the beauty of it is this too, though, from a technical perspective. I'm sorry we're not getting to your questions, baby.
This is what we want. Are you kidding? No.
Okay.
Throw those out. We'll talk all night with you.
Okay. Dallas, that's exact. And what I really enjoyed about the work you guys are doing is those of us who are in the theater community. Sometimes, because sometimes I can be short patient on some things, because sometimes people don't realize there are people in the audience who are there for the first time.
Yeah.
So you don't want to throw off the first time, because I was doing this one play and the dramatic pauses in there was about to drive me batty. And one of the biggest reasons it was about to drive me batty was, see, I was trained not to look over people's heads because I'm nervous or I might lose my line. And I have dropped a line, and praise God, people have been there to catch and pick it up. But generally speaking, I've been fortunate. It's once in a blue moon. And plus, you know, we pick up for each other. But I'm there. Now, it's hard enough to get men to come to the theater as it is. All you men folk, please forgive me. I'm not trying to categorize, but anybody who do theater, you know what I'm talking about. And especially if they're first-time theater goers. We doing this play, and it's a good play, but sometimes you got to be careful as an artist that you don't milk stuff, because it's not fair to the audience. And is it really required or in tune with the piece that you're doing? Don't worry about trying to do all your technique in one scene or whatever. I'm doing the scene. I'm already seeing, I can still see them now, 3 men falling asleep in the audience, okay? This one person gonna get ready to pull this dramatic pause and drama and everything that we did not do in rehearsal. Then they get upset because I get upset. And then later on, somebody come up and say, well, I said, wait a minute. I am not trying to have the audience here all night, okay? Now, if it's relevant, fine. If it really speaks to the play and going to bring something to the table, true. But if it's really about you, the actor, rather than the character and the context of the scene, I have a problem with it. And I said all that to say, one thing I appreciate about the work that you guys do, you do the work. You rehearse, you practice, you speak so people can hear, because that's the biggest thing in theater, live theater. People want to actually hear the words. And I have a saying, even if I didn't necessarily like a play, if I felt like my intelligence was respected and my time appreciated, I feel like it's a good production. And that's one thing I appreciate about inclusive theater productions. You can tell stuff wasn't just thrown together and we're just going to put it out there. You guys do the work. You're mindful, because the shorts, some of the stories y'all did in the shorts, I think it was in 2018. Or was it, I think it's 2018, 2019, I'm sure, when y'all did all the shorts, like the strange space kind of thing, and the office scene where y'all had the office story and whatnot, and all the, and there was all those shorts. and they were sharp, on point. I can hear everybody. The pronunciation was good. So that's one of the things that impressed me is you guys say, okay, we're going to have a theater company. We're going to have a theater company. And we're going to put in the work to make sure that the audience, and it's not about, oh, they did a good job, but it's about, no, we know we're worth doing the work to do a good job. So when you hear Inclusive Theater is doing a production, you know it's going to be worth your time and energy to come and see it. And that's one of the things that I think will help keep the live theater going. Even right now, we're doing the whole Zoom thing. We still shouldn't lose our skills. You know, to me now it's just kind of bred in me, as you can see with all the hand movements and everything.
Well, and it's true. I mean, one of the things that we're going to be working on are monthly readings of plays that are written by folks both in Western New York and outside. And next week we have our first, and it was, you know, basically came to us casted. But then beyond that, we start where we're going to have auditions where people will come on and, you know, unfortunately Zoom is our platform, not unfortunately, thank God, like it's kept us together, but it's just different than what we're accustomed to. So but we'll schedule the auditions and the folks will rehearse. It will just be on this space. We'll come together that once a month. We know Matt Boyle, we have him next week.
Yes.
And the following, Donna Hoke has graciously allowed us to use 2 of her plays. The following month, we have TJ Snodgrass. He's given us a couple of plays. So really great writers that I'm grateful that see that the work that we're doing is good too. And that's
and y'all started out with Melody work, which is Melody Vaughn Smith.
Oh my goodness.
Wonderful playwright. Yes. You know.
Absolutely incredible.
Yes. So that's beautiful to hear. And the thing is, anything you purpose to share with the public, if nothing else, I try to share with my young people. When I used to teach and whatnot, and some I still work with one-on-one and mentor, is what is the thing that can never be replaced, or what is the most valuable thing people have? And they said, time, because you can always make more money, you can always replace things, but time is the one valuable thing that you cannot replace. I mean, you can kind of make up for it in living better, living smarter, all that kind of stuff. It's not about people feeling better, I should have done that. But when you work on a project with the mindset that I want people to know it was worth their time being present for this particular project or whatever. And you can't even go by how people look. I won't forget I was doing a poetry reading. It was this huge, massive church. And I'm glad I had instructors who said, it's not about how many people who are there, okay? If it's 4 people, you still do the play as if you're doing it before 4,000. And going back to what you were saying earlier, I mean, is also, you know, the whole Mariah Carey, this, that, and the other. It's not about the big audience. And again, don't get me wrong, all that is great. I love it when back house, but the whole thing is, all communities deserve good theater. All cities and towns, as you shared, I've worked in New York, I've worked in Washington, I've performed in Philly and whatnot. But Buffalo, Syracuse, Rochester, they have just as much right for wonderful artists. Do I wish that, you know, financially things could be a bit different? Yes, but at the same time, I also love being a mechanical draftsman as well as being an actor. That's why I share with my students who get frustrated, don't be afraid to honor your total self. You can be really good at more than one thing. And also too, that other thing can balance out the artist in you so you don't get depressed, you don't get down, you don't lose sight of life. And then before you know it, sad to say, you're out of here before your time because certain things didn't happen, or you figured this should have taken place and it didn't. So you allow that stuff to seep inside of you, and before you know it, you're gone before any of us wanted you to get out of here because you felt that dreams and aspirations weren't met. But when you do the craft because you know this is what I'm to do. I can do it for one. And I was at this church. Church could seat 1,000 people. It's big church over there on Richmond and I think it was Richmond and Berg, somewhere right up in there. Not where Ann her do the spiritual cafe, but further down on Richmond. I think is Berg, whatever. And huge, beautiful church. There was 4 people in the audience. Okay, evening service. And so I did this poem, and I looked out because I was trained. You look out you connect with people, make sure you let them know you appreciate them, not slavishly, but out of respect. I see you. Thank you for being here. And I want you to be on this journey with me. Let me take you. Let me take you. Let me take you. There was this one woman sitting there, and she was just, okay. So about time the evening was over and the poem was read, it's like, okay, Lord, thank you. I got it. I'm done. People were bored, but it's okay. This woman came to me and she said, excuse me, you just don't know. I was meant to be here. That one poem you did, I was meant to be here to hear that. I just want you to know, thank you. And she walked away. That taught me, don't go by people's expression. Don't worry about the applause. When you do something from the heart and you know it's to be done, and it taught me just do it and do it well. And that made up for quote unquote, only 4 people being in.
But you touched her soul. I mean, that's
Exactly.
that's what it was about. Right. Wow.
Exactly.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. That gave me chills.
It
That reminds me,
just
I'm not
is. And you know what? Okay, is that Dallas?
Yes.
Okay.
I was gonna say, like, just based off of what you just said there, it reminds me of what I forget someone said, but you never know who's in that audience and what they brought in that audience with them that day. So even if
Right.
it's 5 people or 10 people or 1,000 people, there's more than likely somebody in there who, like you said, they were meant to be there at that moment. They were meant to hear what you had to say, and they took it in and they appreciated it. So you like
Yes.
that's what I learned being in theater. That's what I've learned as I'm coaching kids, soccer
Okay,
and
good.
tennis. Like you don't know what those kids have came to that field with. But
Mm-hmm.
if I'm doing my best and I'm being a good positive role model and I'm showing them the right way, they're gonna leave that field with hopefully a much better experience than they came there with. And it'll be not selfishly because of me, because I did my best.
And it's not being selfish, it's being giving. It's being caring. And that's one of the things. It's okay to acknowledge. We don't revel in it and whatnot, but it's good to remind yourself, because that gives you the impetus to continue to do better, to continue to do the work. Along, as you were saying earlier about us being communal creatures, it's just having that balance. When that kid come over, Mr. Dallas, guess what happened? You know, we had a test today and I passed it. And I'm so glad you didn't give up on me in practice and you helped me and you talked to me and made me feel good about myself. Those things matter. And it's through the arts. That's why I really pray that our public schools will recognize the importance of the arts, chorus, painting, drawing, the visual arts, the performing arts, because, you know, people say, how do you talk? Well, one, praise God, I had a grandmother. I call myself the granny of Facebook, because a lot of people don't have grandmothers like I had a grandmother who would say, girl, if you get out there, you stand up straight and you speak in a manner where you can be heard. And I was like, okay. And sometimes I don't realize how big I can project, because we used to perform in a big fellowship hall at a church and make sure we can hear you. But all those things give the children the wherewithal to think, to create, to have confidence. And even if things don't quite work out, prayerfully, they'll have teachers, instructors who say, okay, baby, like one young man was saying about Lorna, Stefan Applewhite, I'm sure he don't mind me mentioning his name, worked with him in time past, and he did the play with Lorna, and you know how she didn't give up on him. And those little things matter. And in theater, when we do the work of encouraging, correcting, asking people to be responsible for what they are to do and being part of a production, part of a team, that builds up the strength to do some things that you thought you might not would have ever have done if it wasn't for your theater or your art experience. Did I lose somebody on mute?
No, I'm talking and I had this stupid thing muted.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been trying to be nice and I muted. So I have a question from our list
Yes.
that I sent over. And just because I'm curious, so one of the things that kind of the world is learning is what people with disabilities have known all along, that you can in fact make accommodations during times where things are not ideal. For example, the quarantine. You know, I had heard a story of a student who in, I want to say January, had reached out to her college professor. It wasn't local, but said, hey, I have very special needs that, you know, I can't necessarily be there every day 4 to 6:30, but if you could let me use Skype or Zoom, I can be there, okay? And she was told no and left the program. Now, by March, the entire university had then in fact gone 100% online. So, you know, when we're forced to make accommodation, we do it, right? But I guess my question is, in going forward then, you know, we've known all along that you can be connected in different and varied ways. But I just wonder if, I mean, again, you know, not to beat a dead horse, but some theater companies don't think that doing things like this is theater at all. And we also think that's untrue. You can do many things in these spaces.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens, you know, in the future with inclusion and theater? What do you think that role is that we all play in maintaining this inclusion?
Okay.
And what our role will be in facilitating dialogue with theater companies that, quite frankly, some won't even talk to us because we're so different. But what then do we do to continue to promote? I mean, we're going to, we know, we make accommodations, but what can we do to keep pushing that so people hear what we're saying?
You know what? I get it, because again, having had Buffalo East, and at Buffalo East, it was 1412 Main Street, and several theater companies, ART, Juggin Theater, people coming in and rehearsing and everything, letting new playwrights come in and do plays. And what broke my heart, one woman did a show for a weekend. It got wonderful reviews, but it was only for a weekend, because I was hoping through having Buffalo East, that could be a stepping stone. Because after going to New York and doing a play off Broadway, then it was picked up to be performed off Broadway at Theater 4. I thought, okay, I could come back to Buffalo, I could do the same thing. I'll start off with an art space, people can workshop, work on stuff, and hopefully a bigger theater will see some of the shows here. And that's part of the reason I stepped into New Phoenix to do the new playwrights, new works at New Phoenix, trying to get area playwright work exposed, because I think they so deserve to have more of their work being done. Somebody will see it and they'll take it. Come to find out, they said, well, no, because since the play was already done at Buffalo East, we're not really interested in giving it a full run. And it ran for only 3 days. Okay, so in all that experience and having been in and out and dealing with stuff, I would just really focus on doing inclusive for the time being. Work on it, establish it, because also it's also economic issues, and people believe that they have their particular subscribers and this, that, and the other, and all that kind of stuff. And especially now with theater companies, some of them not even knowing where they're going to be after this time, even physically, what building or space they're going to be in. The money being what it is, because you're like me. When I had Buffalo East, that was personal money out of my pocket. I was not a 503c. I wasn't in that place to be with a board. Maybe that's why it only lasts 4 years, but that's okay. I'm glad I did what I did and met who I met through it. So if you're in that place, and now with you having been, are you going on your 3rd year or 4th year?
We actually will be going into our 6th.
Oh, okay.
Well, we started with like the writing group, then we went.
Okay, but I mean, as far as theater and publicly putting your stuff out.
Let's say
voices.
Let's say what, like 3 productions?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. And
Yeah.
the only thing I'm saying is, and I understand it though too, now being involved with different groups and whatever, there's only so much energy to go around as far as reviewing and seeing and all this kind of stuff and everything. So I would just really focus on the theater, focus on you. Don't worry about whatever, because especially now everybody's just trying to figure out what are we going to do now? What are the seasons going to look like? And just trying to keep the subscribers and keep people coming. And just keep working on making it sharp, making it tight, making it interesting, and everything. And then in time, you can look at collaborative situations, you know, maybe, especially like you take a place like New Phoenix Theaters, they don't have stairs and whatnot. You could possibly look, you already did the thing with Alleyway, using the space for Alleyway. And then as you continue to do the work, they can say, well, they have an audience that we probably would want to connect with, and our audience can possibly connect with a new theater and be supportive of them. Because sad to say though too, economics being what they are for Western New York, even though the ticket prices aren't bad, you still got so many people struggling as far as the audience population goes. I've been fortunate enough when I was doing stuff up on Main Street or doing plays, I could just about do them for free. That's another reason I share with young people, have another career. And it's not about giving up your dream of being an actor. No, honoring your total self, because I was, but no longer am, a member of Equity because it kept me confined in what I could do. And so in turn, I would just keep doing the work, keep doing the plays, doing the productions, and establishing your reputation. And from there, allow yourself to continue to be aware of new plays, to get to know the area playwrights. And then before you know it, you might have a collaborative project that they can say, because also too, in some of the stuff, some people have union contractors or workers, be it Lightset or whatever. And you know from your work with Alleyway, having done all that work and everything, for so many, I hate to boil it down to strain, it's about budget. And when one can pull it into bringing the audience in and means can be addressed, then things can possibly happen. Because even when you got the means sometimes too, if you don't have the reputation, you don't get phone calls back, okay? I have called several times and they probably say, well, who the heck is Verneice Turner? I don't care if she got the money. Do she got any what they call goodwill in the stock market and whatnot? Do she have any goodwill value? Is her name such that she could bring or make something happen? Because it's not even always about the money too. It's about the rep, the PR, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sorry for going on a long thing, but it's kind of a complicated, folks trying to make it, folks trying to survive and not sure if they're going to have a theater home and all this kind of stuff. And I'll close with saying this. Sad to say, I'm old, not sad to say, I'm old enough to remember American Playhouse on TV. So I've seen theater on television, live theater, The Death of a Salesman, Cinderella. They were done as a play, not as a live movie. But sad to say, some people haven't seen enough of that for them to feel it's comfortable to do a play online or on Zoom. But I think Hamilton might have got people thinking a little bit differently, if you don't mind me saying so.
Mm-hmm. I had forgotten all about American Playhouse.
Yep.
I remember that too.
Okay. Yep. American Playhouse. Okay. Yes. 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 I remember the black and white set. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff. And yeah, because I wish his last name isn't O'Keefe, but I forgot the name of the actor that played the lead role in Death of a Salesman. That was the first actual play I saw on television.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and then of course the Metropolitan Opera, they do it all the time on Channel 3. I mean, well, it's Channel 3 for me, but on PBS, WNED, okay? They put plays on, but I guess people had to see Hamilton first to realize you can do theater on television. Or
it's better in person. It's better in person though.
You know what? It is, but sometimes it just can't be done in person.
Right. Yep.
And as quiet as it's kept though too, you end up reaching more people through the vehicle, because I wouldn't have known about theater if it wasn't for American Playhouse.
Right.
To a certain degree. The only theater I knew was church plays. Okay. And then when I saw Cinderella with Leslie Warren,
yep.
Okay. Growing up as a kid, I was like, oh, in my own little corner.
That's right. Loved it.
I want to be.
That was an event, wasn't it?
Yes. It was magical, and
Yes,
it was a play, and they didn't have special effects. That and Peter Pan. I can't think of her name right now.
Mary, oh God.
You know what I'm talking about.
Mary, can't think of her name. Her first name was Mary.
Yeah, no, I know, but you know, I forgot who her son was. He was some famous actor, whatever. But all these wonderful
Mary
actors
Martin.
I got to see on the stage.
Yeah.
That was Mary Martin, right?
Mary
Yes.
Martin.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And Larry, whatever was his for. He was J.R. Ewing.
Oh, Larry.
Yeah. Right.
Yes. So no, being an artist, you use what's available to you. And as I share with students too, the main connection is the eyes and the voice.
Mm. Yeah. I enjoyed you very much in our town.
Oh, thank you.
I did. And I had only seen that on television. So you were my first live narrator. And it was a non-traditional casting too.
Yes.
So.
Yes, Matt Reformat and all that ART. I'm so glad they were willing to take a chance.
You were
And
wonderful.
And thank you. And you bring up an important point about theater and going back to inclusive theater. But to be a multi-ethnic cast,
Mm-hmm.
but the play is universal, because I was talking with him about another play that in another particular case, though, the cast needed to be of one ethnicity. In this case, European American ethnicity, because of the storyline it was dealing with, which is a cultural change. But where our town was so universal, even though it takes place in a New England town or whatnot, that kind of community, it was interesting. I was watching a program on Toni Morrison, and she lived in a totally integrated community in Ohio, just north of Oberlin, okay? So our town is reflective of some of the towns and cities that we don't hear enough about in our history here in America.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Did we lose Amy?
I don't know. Where is Amy?
Well,
Dallas, you there?
There she is. I see the
I'm here.
thumbs up. I hope I, answered your question as far as what can be done and the various theater companies and all that kind of stuff. And again, it almost goes back to, sad to say, it's the oppressed that has to elevate and educate the oppressor.
No, you're absolutely correct. And one of the things that we've learned in our time is it's not just staging, it's attendance. So, for example, some of the folks that come to our shows because of accessibility or finance or whatever have never been to see a stage production of anything. Right. And we had not realized that going into it. This was something that came later, and we're like, wait a minute, how can you be 35 years old and never gone to a show?
Oh, but
that's...
Yeah. But the thing is this, again, it's finances too, especially Buffalo being such a sports town. Yes. Guys, they're going to get their golfing tee money. They're going to get their football, okay? They're going to pay for their hockey, and some of the women too, okay? Where oftentimes, sad to say, it's more women and older and stuff like that. We got some men, thank God, who comes to theater, but when you look at the overall demographics, and that's why, again, I don't do too many plays because I'm like, we got to make sure this is tight, because when people come and see this, we want them, they hear about another play with this company or with me, they're going to feel, oh yeah, they're not going to go, yeah, like the Bills, but they can say, you know what? Yeah, I wouldn't mind going to check that out.
People remember that. Yes, they do. They do. Yes.
Well, there's too much to do here.
That, and also too, theater somewhat has gotten a bit of a bad rap. Because that's why I try to educate people. If you're taking somebody to the theater for the first time, people used to make fun of Studio Arena and some of the shows that they did. But I get what they're saying, because when you have to pay the bills, you have to have some show that everybody's going to go to, be happy they paid the ticket for, be it, Carousel or Sound of Music or whatever, okay? In order to do the more experimental pieces and stuff like that. And we have to be respectful and mindful of the audience, because I have run across people who, they don't know nothing. I said, that's a lie from the pit of hell. Just like somebody was upset with Buffalo audiences. I said, let me share something with you. They know what the heck is going on. They may applaud, but they're not going to go and tell their friends, girl, you need to go see that play. Man, you need to go see that play. If it's not a good play, they'll clap for the effort, but you won't get the houses. That's how Buffalo is. We are very polite people here in Western New York. But don't play us. But again, too, I really share with people, when you're bringing somebody who's coming to the theater for the first time, because people got to watch their pennies, their pocketbooks. So we have to ensure that they feel it's a worthwhile investment. Because I don't even like to say you buying a ticket compared to you're making an investment in yourself as a member of the audience and in the community. So that's the biggest thing. And when we look at things that way, that's why I don't really be hard on theaters that may do some traditional plays along with the experimental. Because you just have to have that balance. And you got to nurture your community. You got to kind of feed and bring people into it. And just like I enjoyed the shorts, they were in the summertime, so people can come to Northampton. The sun, it was in the summer, early start, 7 o'clock, something like that, so people can come and see. It's good to be there, park. All those things are important things to consider, especially as a new theater company.
Well, and we love our home on the East Side. You know, people come in and they're like, this is beautiful. Yeah, like we've known that all along. We love the Foundry. You know, we knew we wanted our home there for that reason. We love the neighborhood that's there. I mean, it's for us always been that way. And but to your point, there's people that before would never have come to the Foundry at all.
No, they wouldn't come past Utica.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because a lot of people are familiar with the Paul Robeson Theater over on Maston.
Yes.
Okay. But to have that, and I don't know what all is going to go on over there. And you can let me know when it's with Miss Baines having passed over.
Right.
And again, with the whole Corona thing and don't know what the theater thing, that may be one of the first venues to even, you get the alleyway. It might not be a bad idea to look and check with them on your next, depending on the, the play and this, that, and the other. And then that way too, you can educate people. Oh, by the way, just around the corner is the Foundry, a few blocks up. We're including the theater. And even though we perform at other theaters, our home base is located just a few blocks south.
Yep.
I guess that's south, whatever, of Maston Avenue, and just 2 blocks over Maston on Hampton, and we're there for you.
Yes, yes. Dallas, do you want to take us home?
Sure. Thank you very much for spending the time with us. We went a little bit over, but it didn't even feel like it. This was probably one of the more inspirational and just motivating conversations that we've had, especially after the rough couple of months and even weeks or days that many of us have probably had. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to talk with us and share with us. It's been a really good night.
Yes, thank you, Verneice.
Oh, thank you all.
I
for
was looking
having
forward
me.
to this all week.
Oh, you're gonna have me crying.
Don't you dare, but we love you. You know we love you.
No, I
Again,
know.
you've always
Thank
supported us.
you so much, Mrs. Turner.
My pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing you again on stage.
Oh, I don't know how long that's gonna be, but we'll see
I
what
know.
happens.
I
Thank
know.
you all again, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the stage too.
Absolutely. And I'll just close with a couple brief announcements. We put up a call for one-act plays. We are taking them on a rolling basis. So if you know any playwrights that have like 10-minute or short plays, we're looking for them. The theme is, generally speaking, know your neighbor, know your neighbors. Yes, like, next door, local, countywide, global, whatever. The magic is up to you. So just the only stipulation, it's 15-minute max, and obviously we're on Zoom, so we can't have elaborate settings, but we're looking for them. We're going to be doing the monthly series. That's going to be super exciting. Also, just a reminder that next Saturday, the 18th at 8 p.m., we have 2 plays by Matt Boyle. It's Lawn Wars, starring Dallas Taylor, pending his direction, and Baldwin Giambro. And then it's directed by Queen, and she's not here, darn it, but it's for her directorial debut. She's super excited.
She was here.
Yes, and then followed by Brotherhood of the Whirlpool Box, starring Christopher Standard and Andrew Zakari.
Oh, beautiful.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so we will have the plays. So we'll have 1 play and then Q&A, 1 play, Q&A. So it's going to be exciting, changing the format. Then the week after, we have Amy Teal from Teal's Niagara Theater. She's going to be talking to us. She does a lot of stuff with musical theater. Her daughter, Madeline, before COVID, I think, is en route to Broadway, off-Broadway performances, because she's absolutely incredible. So she'll talk to us a little bit about that next week. And then beyond that, who knows? But we're gonna keep grinding, because that's what we do. We're scrappy, and we'll do the best that we can. So thank you all for being here. Verneice, again, thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you all for having me.
See you all soon.
Have a great night.
All right, you too. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.